good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our live webinar today. Folks, you're in for a treat because as you can see from this slide, we've got a special guest, Dr. Vicki Ratner. She's a retired general surgeon. She's now helping business people all over the United States to connect with doctors in various ways, to engage with them. And of course, that's what you will have to do if you get involved in our business. So folks, if you're looking right now at this webinar because you are interested in starting your own business, and especially in the medical field, this is the right time and the right place, as you'll see. Now, I'm going to do one little thing here, and that's to just cut off the slides for just a second so that you can just kind of look directly into my eyes as I talk to you just a brief moment here why we do these webinars. If you're looking to break away from your current job, for example, and get your own business going, be your own boss, this is the right place. If you're tired of somebody else telling you what to do, how long to do it, and when you can take a vacation, well, you're in the right place at the right time. So maybe you just know that you have the ability to earn more than you're currently earning by working, just smarter in your own business. In other words, not harder for somebody else, but for yourself. But you just haven't found quite the right business yet, the perfect vehicle, so to speak, to reach a higher income level. Well, pay attention. Yeah, because for the next few minutes, Dr. Vicki and I are going to talk to you exactly how we here at ABS have changed the lives of hundreds of people from every possible background and every possible educational status. How? Well, we just basically train those people from every walk of life, and we help them fulfill their dream of becoming their own boss. So this is a real business now. It's not a fad. It's not a multi-level marketing deal out there. It's not all those other things you see out there on the web for making lots of money, thousands of dollars a day. This is a real business based on a real need in the marketplace. So just for the next few minutes, silence your cell phone. I think I'll do that right now. There we go. And close your email up. Yeah, I know you're reading your email right now. Turn off the TV, get out of YouTube, stop watching those cat videos, and put out your real cat if you need to, or dog, and just focus on what we have to tell you during this live webinar. Maybe, just maybe, you'll discover how you can make your dream come true as well, as we've made it happen for hundreds of people from coast to coast. Maybe you want to travel while you can still enjoy it, or at least when the pandemic is over. Maybe you want to retire earlier than you had planned, or maybe you just want to put your children through college or help some of your loved ones financially. Seem like they're always needing help, right? Or maybe you want to build that dream home by the lake, or play more golf, or spend more time with your kids or grandkids. Whatever it is that you're looking for in your lifestyle, you can achieve it by being in control of your own destiny. Now, here's a little secret very few people know. 83% of all wealthy people, did you hear that? Write that down. 83% of all wealthy people in the United States got wealthy with the thing we're going to talk about on this webinar. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the healthcare business per se. It has nothing to do with inheriting wealth, that's for sure, because most people don't have a rich uncle or aunt that they're going to inherit thousands or millions from. And if they do, they're probably not their favorite niece or nephew anyway, so they probably won't even get, a Starbucks gift card. And if you think you're lucky and someday you'll win the lottery, folks, or the amazing race, your chances of that happening are about as good as being struck by lightning in the same spot 7 times. And unless you have the training and the education to be a doctor or a lawyer, your best bet is to do what 83% of Americans did to build wealth. Are you ready? Here's what most people did to get wealthy. They started their own business. Yeah, they became the boss. They kept most of the profits, and that's how they became wealthy. Now let that sink in for a minute. They started and owned their own business. Now, Dr. Vicki and I happen to know we've both started dozens of businesses over the past 50 years or so, but the one business that helped me and my family to make all our dreams come true was the business we're going to tell you about today. It's a very niche business. You may have heard of it before, but maybe you never knew anybody personally that had done medical billing for doctors and made money with it. Well, here's how simple it is. You'll be helping medical providers in your area to collect more of the revenue that they've earned when they see patients. That's it. That's how simple this business is. And we have graduates for our training that are bringing in over $1 million a year. That's right. And I've interviewed some of them. You can see those on our YouTube channel out there. Now, here's what this business entails. You'll basically be accessing a cloud-based award-winning software system to submit the claims to their insurance companies and the government agencies like Medicare to help the doctors get paid more. And they'll get paid a lot quicker, by the way, than using their own staff, using their own software in their own office. You'll not only save them money, but by outsourcing their billing to you, but you'll collect more money for them than they've ever collected before, probably faster than any other company can in your area, because we have the right systems and the right technology, and we've been doing this for 27 years. So today we're going to pull back the curtain on this little known business, tell you how you can get involved in it, and if you think it's right for you. I'll tell you right now that this business is not for everybody. It's not everybody can follow directions, for example. Not everybody has a system, and they like to follow that system step by step. Not everybody can figure out how to market something like this to doctors. And that's why I have Dr. Vicki on here today, because she's figured that out, having been in practice for many, many years, saw thousands of patients. She now wants to share with you why she decided to make a real big decision at the very beginning of her practice to outsource her billing, and why she believes that every doctor should be doing that too. And for those who followed our instructions and followed our system that we've developed over these past 27 years, these are the entrepreneurs that have gone through our proven training program and become what we call certified medical revenue managers. And they built. Dr. Vicki,
Hello,
there?
Patrick. Hello, everyone.
There she is. Hey, and you're right up there in what, Minnesota, right?
I am.
I'll bet you still got snow up there.
Absolutely. And you don't anymore.
No, we got rid of that last week. We had our 2 weeks of winter, and then it's gone. We like it that way. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time to be on here. I thought I'd just start out, Dr. Vicki, since you are a doctor. Let's hear your views on how doctors are dealing with this pandemic.
Great question, Patrick. Thank you so much for it. So, the pandemic has impacted everyone's life. But if you think about our major therapeutic intervention, the reason that your kids might be home or you might be home is that we want to make sure that the demand for healthcare resources does not exceed the supply. So, I'm a surgeon. I used to operate on women with breast cancer. And every time I did that, a woman would be on the ventilator. Well, these ventilators for elective cases are now earmarked for COVID patients. So for this past year now, to a variable degree in your state, and you might be in a state where it hasn't impacted you as much, but in essence, elective cases have shut down. So I'm in Minnesota right now. The Mayo Clinic is the single largest employer in Minnesota, and they were projecting a $3 billion shortfall for 2020.
Wow.
And they responded with across-the-board pay cuts. So this has been a difficult time for doctors. I know doctors in private practice who have seen their income drop by 80 to 90%. The American College of Surgeons has really stepped up and offered leadership, and I was just blown away when I took a look and saw a webinar entitled Economic Survival Strategies in the COVID era. So doctors are no longer in a position of just saying, oh, well, if the insurance company rejects this claim, no biggie.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in practice, my CPA actually used to say, don't worry, you need a tax break. We'll just use that rejected claim as a tax break. But things are different now. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone is struggling, because the really entrepreneurial doctors, a lot of them have had the best year ever. But right now, cash flow is king. Doctors recognize that we are in a new time, and they are taking finances much more seriously than I have ever seen them before.
Which is a good thing, because some of them don't pay attention to their cash flow in good times. But boy, especially in hard times, they need to be taking a very careful look at the bottom line, or they won't be in practice. That's that
That's
simple.
right. That's right.
People ask me all the time about our business being in the medical field like this and how has this affected us. Well, you can hear some of the recent interviews that I've done with licensees where they're signing up clients even more so than they did before the pandemic. That's because I think the doctors can now visit virtually with them. We don't have to go and see them personally, and they have more time on their hands. So they've got times to step back, so to speak, and look at their practice realistically and say, what can I do to make up for this last year?
Right. And as I said, Patrick, you know, the more entrepreneurial doctors, some of them had their best years ever in 2020. Those who were able to pivot and really focus in on the needs of the patients. And I think that the reason that your licensees have been so successful in the past year is that you were in the sweet spot right now. You were solving a problem that really hurts for doctors. So I think that this is a great time to help doctors with their billing and with their overall revenue.
Yeah, I think it was Andrew Carnegie back in the 30s or 40s when he was big. One of the wealthiest men in the world said, the way to wealth is to find a need and fill it. And of course, that's what our licensees, we call them business owners, that invest in our business, go through our trade. That's what they do. They are just focusing on the real need that's out there right now, which is cash flow.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wrote a book 10 years ago that was, called Cash Flow to Cash Crunch. I'm sorry, Cash Crunch to Cash Flow, because doctors are in a cash crunch. A lot of them are most of the time, because like you said, you don't have a lot of training in business and, keeping up with your bottom line as a doctor. You're trained in medicine.
Right. Right. Now, there's something that I want to add. You might be wondering, okay, well, if we've got elective cases shut down, like is there a business here? And the answer is absolutely. You know, a little old lady with hip pain who needs her hip replaced has been asked to be patient. And in many states, things are really opening up. So there's a huge backlog. And so, you know, we will always need our doctors. We're never going to outsource our medical care to India. I mean, this is a solid business. And, you know, as Patrick and I invest in businesses, we always want to know, is there a future here? Because there are some entrepreneurial ventures that aren't doing well. I just,
Yeah.
my heart breaks for the people who bought into a Subway sandwich franchise, for example.
Right.
And so, you know, especially now as you're thinking about making an investment in yourself, you want to do this in a really smart way. And getting involved with doctors is a smart thing. After the Great Recession in 2008, one of the first industries to start blossoming was healthcare. We will always need our doctors. And, you know, doctors are really excited about getting to that backlog, you know, getting more patients in. And as more of our population gets vaccinated, more and more people are going to feel comfortable going in and getting their hips replaced, doing a cosmetic surgery that they want to do. So there's going to be plenty of work.
Yeah, I see it as there's a big backlog of people who wanted to do some things medically, but were just waiting till the pandemic either went away or slowed down or whatever. Texas next week, in fact, is opening up completely. All businesses can open 100% in all the restaurants, and no masks are required. Now, whether that's a good idea or not, we'll only know after we
Yeah,
practice that a little bit. But some states are, it's easier to do that in Texas than it would be, for example, in California or New York City because of the concentration of people there. So we'll see what happens. But I've just never dreamed that our business would be booming. We have more people wanting to know about this business and going through our training than this time last year. So I say that's a good sign.
yeah. Well, something that I learned from you, Patrick, was that insurance companies, just as a matter of course, will reject about 30% of the claims. mean, there are some people who think that it's their way of making money off of the money that they're holding back. I'm not going to comment on that, but what I will say is that any business person would not leave 30% of their revenue on the table, right?
Right.
Yet every day, doctors are leaving about 30% of their revenue on the exam table. And this is not something that they can afford to do any longer.
Yeah, and people who are new to this industry may not understand that, but these insurance companies they're in business to make money and to keep money. So I've always said that insurance is basically a business that brings in lots and lots of cash and pays out as little as possible. That's how
Exactly.
they make a profit. Well,
Exactly.
that's what happens is they get a claim from a doctor that might have just one little bitty error on it, and they'll stamp that rejected and send it back to the doctor hoping that the doctor does not resubmit it, right? I mean, that's bound to be happening. At
Yes.
one time, we had so many rejections. I told my wife, I said, honey, I think there's somebody in the basement of the insurance company shredding every 10th claim that comes in, just shredding it. Because we'd call them up and say, hey, we sent this claim, where is it? And they'd claim that they never got it. So
Right.
now that's harder to do, with our cloud-based real-time billing system that we have for our people. They can't fool us. We track it all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to run a business if you don't have money. I learned this the hard way when I first got out of my training and went into practice. I knew I wanted to be in private practice. I didn't feel like I was quite ready to go it alone. So I joined another surgeon, and he had one office person who he'd had for years and years. And so he brought me into the practice and I started asking questions. Well, how does this payment stuff work? And not too long after I arrived, this woman handed in her resignation. We think in retrospect, she was probably embezzling. And because I was asking questions, maybe she was just a little concerned that she would be found out. And theft and fraud is a huge concern for doctors. We tend to trust people. So whom should we trust? And sometimes we don't do it very well. All right, so we've got this person gone. My partner's wife said, "How hard can billing be? Let me just take a couple hours from my tennis game and I'll do your billing." And it did not take her too long to discover that this was a huge undertaking. And she was in no position. If they wanted to pay the dues to their country club, she needed to get some cash in. And there was actually a quarter when we made an owner investment, putting money into the business rather than
Oh my
taking
gosh.
money out to pay our quarterly taxes.
Mm.
And that does not feel good. It does not feel good not to be able to reliably be able to take out money from your business. So anyway, we hired a temp back then, and the temp was just so wonderfully kind. She would go out into the waiting room, help the little old ladies with their paperwork, and we hired somebody else. And a couple months later, we got a call from the temp agency. They encouraged us to take a very careful look at our Medicare billing because the woman they had sent to us was a convicted Medicare felon. So, we
Oh
sort of
my
rethought her
goodness.
being out in the waiting room with these little old ladies. How many identities did she steal? But, by then it was sort of like, how would we even know what's up and what's down? I
Yeah.
mean, this is just so crazy. So I had the opportunity to open up a second office at a hospital that was forming a multidisciplinary breast cancer group. And the very first thing I knew with absolute certainty is I was going to outsource my billing. There was no way that I wanted to ever be in a position again of having to make an owner investment. I wanted money to flow out, not in.
Right.
And so I checked around, hey, are you outsourcing your billing? And when the same name kept on coming up again and again, I called this woman and hired her. And that's how doctors kind of behave. We talk with one another. We share resources. And this is important as you go into business with doctors, because your end game is to become the go-to guy or go-to gal among targeted groups of doctors. So that's how I hired my first outsourced biller, and it was the best decision that I ever made. I think that all of my practice success really came because I outsourced my billing.
Well, and I hear that from other doctors as well, that it took the burden of having to focus on the getting the money in. They turn that focus to the patient, and that's where it should be.
Right.
Doing a good job for the patient will get the money to come in if you have somebody who knows what they're doing the billing. And of course,
Right.
we train
Exactly.
people. We train people, as you know, Vicki, from every walk of life that have no background. Most of our folks, I'd say 98% of them, don't have any background in the medical field, or especially in medical billing. And we teach them what they need to know. It's not rocket science, but you have to be doing it right. There's a lot of things you could do wrong, of course. You brought up to me a few weeks back, I don't know if you remember these, but we talked about 3 important questions that you came up with that you thought that people on these webinars might be interested in. For example, number 1, what is the doctor's reality in the real world? We've talked a little bit about that. What is the doctor's financial pain and where does that come from? And what are the opportunities? So let's focus on this reality. Why don't you talk to people about some of the stuff that you told me that was the reality in a doctor's office?
Okay. Well, the most important thing to know is that I divide the world into 2 kinds of groups. There's the white coats, people like me. We have a clinical training. We want to be here serving our patients. And then there's white coats. There are business people. And both suits and white coats want to make a difference. Everyone wants to be successful, but the metrics by which they measure success is different. So I know that Patrick and ABS want to help you generate a lot of revenue, a lot of profit. That is the metric by which ultimately you will measure success. And he might have a licensee saying, I had such a great year. My profits are up 30% from last year. Okay, well, if I went into the surgeon's lounge or the doctor's dining room and I said, I had a best year ever, my revenue is up 30%, they would send me to the psychiatrist. That is just not how doctors talk. It's not how they think. So you're a lot smarter than doctors are when it comes to business and making money. So it's really important that you understand this. So a lot of the things that are on this slide are business challenges that doctors are working with. And I will tell you that 3 out of the 4, they would just rather not deal with at all. Because of all of these changes, like even before the COVID pandemic, we had an epidemic of burnout. In 2019, Medscape did a survey of doctors, and 40% of doctors reported being burned out in the past year. So they'd lost the joy in medicine. And what sucked out the joy? What was the number 1 factor? Well, I can tell you that when doctors were asked, what would you need to turn this around? The thing that they said is more money. Because when you're profitable, you can buy an awful lot of freedom. So there are any number of things sort of conspiring to make it really, really challenging for doctors. And, I will also just tell you another unfortunate reality. We lose about the equivalent of a medical school class to doctor suicide every year. And the thing is that a small difference can make a huge difference. So if a doctor could only outsource their billing, see their revenue go up by 30%, that makes a huge difference in the life of the doctor, the life of the doctor's family, and it keeps the doctor happier, so they're going to deliver better care. So just as one action, like when I'm talking to doctors about how they can thrive, I mean, probably my number one recommendation is outsource your billing. Let's build a solid financial foundation.
Yeah, and that seems like it should be understood by everybody. You know, as I'm not the CEO of our company anymore. I retired here recently, but as you can see, I'm still involved in the business. But I wanted to turn that over to my son, Adam. Uh, but as the CEO, I was approached by a lot of people selling a lot of different products and services. And I can tell you that as the CEO, no matter what problems we might have had as a company, if you gave me enough cash flow, I could probably solve that problem, whatever it was, you know. So it does go back to cash flow, getting that cash in. By the way, I don't see any questions actually being typed in right now, but I am watching the question box carefully, folks. So if I see a question, I'll take those in the order they come in. Now, we're going to run out of time here. We're almost halfway through this now. We are. And so if we get to the end of the webinar and you just think of your questions towards the end, we may not can squeeze them all in. So this is your chance to ask Dr. Vicki directly what her thoughts are on these different things. Now, Dr. Vicki, let me just say this. In addition to all these things we see here on the screen, you've written a book here recently, The
Right,
Myth of the Rich Doctor. Tell us
right.
why you wrote that book. What does that mean, the myth? Are doctors not rich? I thought they all were.
No, they're not, Patrick. So doctors have a very, very hard time translating their high incomes into true financial security. So I define rich as the ability to meet all of your bills, right? Pay all of your bills. And I think of wealth as the ability to maintain a lifestyle once the paycheck ends, once you're not seeing patients. So because of this suit white coat thing, doctors have a very dysfunctional relationship to money. And I'll tell you what, Patrick, how about if we give a copy of this book to the people on this webinar as
I can
my
do
way
that.
of saying thank you for being here. So I've interviewed literally hundreds of doctors about their money stories, and I've seen certain trends, and this book summarizes the trend. So I wrote this book. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't help doctors build wealth. I help them build thriving lives. But in this book, what I did was I said, let's pretend that money is your patient. Let's do a history and physical to assess the state of your financial wealth. And as Patrick mentioned, this book kind of went viral. I was invited all over the United States to speak with groups of doctors about the ideas here in this book.
Yes, I know. I have heard some of those speeches, and I can tell you, folks, that when Dr. Vicki speaks, other doctors listen. And you know, we might point out, Dr. Vicki, I know doing this webinar, sometimes we have people ask, well, you know, is Dr. Vicki on your staff? Is she in your office? No, I'm in Texas. She's in Minneapolis. We have people all over the country that help out with our company and support and coaching and that kind of thing. And Dr. Vicki's main thrust really is working with doctors, helping them to thrive. But when I ran across her a few years back, I said, you know what? If anybody knows how to connect with doctors, it's got to be Dr. Vicki Ratner. So we've had a terrific relationship since then. And Dr. Vicki and I have actually written a book together that I'm going to show you here in a minute. Now, I wasn't involved in that myth, but by the way, I think I just put that in the handout section. So folks, if you look for the handouts over there, you might have to open that one up too to see what's in it. There's a couple of handouts that I've put in there already. So you can take a glance at some of those. They all have to do with outsourcing. And of course, the myth book is in there as well now. Okay, well, let me just, what happened to my slides? Here they are. Let me get back to this second question, doctor's financial pain. Now, there's a quote here I've got from the Doctor Patient Foundation that says 2 out of 3 doctors say that they're just squeaking by or in the red financially. In other words, they're losing money. If that's true, then why do people think that there's going to be a problem talking to a doctor about boosting that revenue and helping them to get more revenue in? That's what we do.
So I just want to mention that I am in a mastermind, and there are a fair number of physicians in there. So there is a surgeon who was just sick and tired of her practice, nothing but headaches. Patrick, she had $1 million in accounts receivable. A
Oh my goodness.
million.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've got lots of licensees that would like to run across that. We can help with that. So these are claims that have been sent out and then they probably got rejected and they just put them in a drawer somewhere. They didn't follow up on them. Yeah, that
Exactly.
happens.
And this really smart woman let it get out of control to have $1 million in accounts receivables.
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
And like you said, they think that that's a write-off at the end of the year, but I don't know of any doctor who would not rather have that money in their, hip national bank
Right, exactly.
than have to go and write it off on their taxes. All right, third question that you said that people might be interested in is opportunities. What are the opportunities for the people who are here today? You want to address a little bit about what we can do to help them, maybe starting with that book that you and I wrote.
Okay, so Patrick and I are both serial entrepreneurs. And quite honestly, I've invested in some things that haven't worked out very well at all.
Right.
And so now, before I try to decide if there's a direction I want to go in my business or maybe make an investment, I want to make sure that there's really a market there and that people are willing to exchange money for the products or services that I'm creating. And I'm here to tell you today that, unlike other unfortunate industries, I mean, you might be on this webinar because the industry that you were in is no more. So this might be very real for you. Doctors are never going to go away. Okay, so there's real work, there's real licensees making real money. And what I will tell you is that for the past decade, I've been helping people build business relationships with doctors. And I will tell you that there are other easier clients to get. The barrier to entry in the medical market is very high. But the good news for you is that you are going to get special training and special resources to help you overcome that high barrier to entry. So maybe somebody else who has a home-based business but is not an ABS licensee, they're trying to get the attention of the doctor, but you are going to have the competitive advantage. And I mean to be humble here, but what I'm here to tell you, if I'm telling the truth, is that the most influential person in a doctor's life is another doctor. And as an ABS licensee, you sort of have me by your side. You get to be under the umbrella of my credibility because of opportunities like this. And let you describe this, Patrick.
Yeah, well, this book, as you can see, that Dr. Vicki and I collaborated on, has a foreword at the very bottom of that slide. You'll see it's the foreword by Susan Smith or some fake name we put on there. But folks, in real life, if you join us and go through our training, you get copies of this book to use as a marketing tool. So imagine having your name just on the cover of the book. Now you could stick a sticker on there that says, the compliments of your name, but to have the foreword in the book actually written by you, we've actually written one that's pretty generic that you can just put your name on. And at the end of it, let's see, I think that's this slide here. You actually, at the end of that foreword, you've got your name and your contact information. Dr. Vicki, this is like, it's an expensive business card, but people can buy these books from us with their name printed on the inside and outside for like less than $4. I mean, the book retails, as you know, $24.95 out there on Amazon. But this book is a marketing tool that gives them, like you said, instant credibility.
Right. And so, not only will you have the opportunity to have a thriving business, you're going to be shown how to get in front of doctors. And you're going to have tools and resources to help you succeed.
Yeah, Dr. Vicki recommended this a few months back. It's an actual letter on her letterhead that we issue to the people who come through our training, since she knows us as an organization. She knows that she can depend on us. In fact, all of our licensees we can depend on because they have us to back them up, with 27 years experience. We're the largest network of medical billing companies in the United States. So she's written this letter that will have your name and your company name on it that you can actually use to introduce yourself to the doctors in your area. Now, folks, there's not many companies that provide these kind of tools. And we have another book that's out there as well that Dr. Vicki wrote, 10 Critical Questions for Physicians. This one is a forward that my son wrote, but you get to put your name on the back cover at the very bottom, right below Dr. Vicki's picture and blurb. So they're just great tools. That's in addition to all the full color marketing brochures and things that we have for licensees as well. So let's see. Here's a question from Anna. She says, Dr. Vicki, how many hours a day would I be putting into this business? Maybe we can zero in on what it takes to do a medical claim. You know, I've had people tell me it takes 2 or 3 minutes. So literally, unless somebody was doing thousands of claims in a day's time, they couldn't put in but just a few hours a day doing this for doctors. Now, you didn't do the billing, you had it outsourced, but did you have that one person handling all the billing for you and the other partner?
So I was on my own when I outsourced the billing. I think he tried to keep it in-house. I was unwilling to do that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, after that little experience you had with the
Yeah.
Medicare embezzler.
Yeah. And the uncertainty. I mean, if you've got somebody in-house, anything can happen to them. I mean, what if they get sick? What happens when they go on vacation? And I wanted my billing to just keep on humming no matter what was going on,
Right.
life of my staff.
Yeah, even if you have staff that goes on vacation or they get sick, you don't have to worry about that cash flow stopping if you've got somebody that's paid to do that. And of course, our people get a percentage of all the money that they collect for the doctor. So let's say they bill $100,000 for a doctor in a month's time. They're going to be able to charge anywhere from 6 to 8% of that. And so I mean, they could be earning thousands of dollars with just one client, if they have enough patients. Of course, it depends on the type of doctor and the patient, so forth.
Yeah. And Patrick, as a doctor, I really liked that because what that meant was the person who did my billing had skin in the game. So she had
Yeah,
an incentive to really do a great job
right.
because she was going to do well as I did well versus having it in-house. If there are billing challenges, what was the incentive for our staff to bring it to our attention or fix it? There wasn't any. So
No,
a lot of the problems just kind of got swept under the carpet.
right. The staff, that's a good point. They don't really have any motivation because they're not paid a commission or a percentage. That's probably against the law. But knowing that they outsource it to a company that makes money every time the doctor makes money, that ties them together as partners.
Right.
I'm just showing some slides here that have to do with our system, all the different things that are involved in it. Nothing particular I wanted to talk about in these. So I'm going to look for some more questions here as they come in. I'll address those directly to Dr. Vicki. But Dr. Vicki, you told us a little bit about how you got started in this, but you didn't tell the story that I've heard you tell about why you became a doctor. You want to share that?
Sure. So, and by the way, this is your chance to ask a doctor anything you want. So I hope that you'll avail yourself of the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I call myself an accidental surgeon. I was in a graduate program when one day I fainted on my way to the bathroom. I had an ovarian cyst that had ruptured over a blood vessel. And by the time the surgeons got into my belly, about half of my blood volume was in my pelvis. So I
Wow.
thought it was the end. And I was just so grateful to be alive that I knew that I wanted to save other people's lives like my own had been saved. And so it's not surprising that I became a surgeon. I was actually the fourth woman to go through the general surgical training. And I became a breast surgeon, not necessarily by intention, but that's just kind of what happened. It fit really well for me. And it was a great joy and privilege to help patients with that.
Yeah, that would be quite a motivation to become a doctor. I think when you see the miracles that medicine can do, you just think, you know what? I want to perform some of those miracles on a daily basis.
Yeah, yeah. I often
There,
thought, I'm having so much fun doing this. I would do this for free. I used to joke about that. And then, when we had our little glitch, I was doing it for free, it felt like. Um,
You're like me. People still ask me all the time, well, Patrick, I thought you had retired from this business. Why are you still involved in the webinars and things like that? And I make calls, of course, to licensees and speak with them all day long too. So I said, well, I could be whittling and, fishing and golfing and stuff like that, but nothing is as fun as helping other people succeed. Nothing.
yes, I agree.
You mentioned earlier burnout. I think that's an important point that doctors do get burned out. Mentally, I just can't imagine the pressures that they face on a day-to-day basis. So why would they want to take on the burden of trying to keep up with I'll say the business side of their practice, in addition to the patient side, because there's plenty to focus on the patient side, I'm sure, trying to keep up with all the latest of everything.
Yeah, so let me tell you kind of something that I do and how outsourced billing supports that. So I really want to help people live in their sweet spots. So there are certain kinds of patients that doctors love working with. There are certain kinds of problems that they really enjoy. But the thing is that the hourly rate for different activities are not the same. So I like to sit down with the doctor and ask them, okay, what do you really love to do? But then we can also take reports and say, let's look at where the revenue comes from. So the actual shaping of the practice is a molding of those two areas. What brings the greatest professional rewards and what brings the greatest financial rewards. And now doctors can design their practice by intention rather than just, whatever comes in the door. And the information that you can get from an outsourced biller can be huge. It can help with the roadmap towards practice success.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's also a good question here that just came in from Pamela. She says, from the video that we saw, most of the doctors were concerned on having visibility into their billing situation if they outsourced it. Did you have a way of checking on your own billing?
I just have to laugh. I contribute to this Journal of Medical Practice, and the editor says that in every single issue, they've got to have something about theft and fraud because this is such a big deal. So doctors are kind of control freaks. So a lot of our behavior is intended to help us achieve a certain emotional state. So most doctors want to be in control. Most nurses want to belong. Some people like to be admired and some people like to be right. Thanks, Dad. So doctors want to be in control and they have this sense that if they keep their billing in-house, they're going to be in control. They're going to decrease their risk of theft and fraud. Well, doctors every day hear stories about, staff that just rob them blind. I mean, I know somebody, a breast surgeon, whose office manager of like 15 years embezzled her entire retirement and it was gone before this woman figured it out. So doctors are really, really worried about theft and fraud, and they want to be in control. And the best way to do this is to have checks and balances, right? It's not letting one person have the key to everything. So I think that's really what the doctors were saying between the lines. How do I know that things are going to get done? And by the way, the backstory to that is that in the process of outsourcing, they probably were able to see how out of control things were without them even knowing.
Yeah, and Pamela, by the way, I wanted to show here this slide because you may be wondering about that access to the doctor. Since you basically set this system up for the doctor in their office, you basically are the administrator and you have the right to give access to this to the doctor to the office manager or the billers, anybody else that's in the office that wants access to it, you can give that to them. And they can see the status of their money, their claims 24/7 from anywhere in the world, including on a smartphone. I mean, literally, the doctor could be at the golf course and want to take a look at where his cash flow is, and he can see it right there. So that's a huge advantage over systems that, there are software companies out there that basically they'll put you in this business and they'll give you a CD with some software on it. You have to somehow get that on your hard drive of your computer, and then you have to keep it updated, of course. And then you have to put a piece of software on the doctor's office computer so that you can connect your two together. With ours, folks, it doesn't matter. They don't actually have anything installed on their computer, neither do you. You literally could go buy a brand new laptop at Best Buy today, go to McDonald's and hook up to their Wi-Fi and run your business from there, because nothing is downloaded and installed on your computer. It's wonderful. If you haven't ever worked with cloud-based software, you've got to see this to believe it. Ours was written over 20 years ago, by the way, by a couple of doctors specifically for cloud-based, running a practice completely without any software or hardware. They can literally just run this from anywhere. Let's see. Here's a great question here from Rachel. She says, "How hard do you believe it is to get doctors to give you a chance to present to them? I've been on both sides, and I believe this is exactly what is needed in offices, but I need to get in the door." That's a great point. Getting in the door, that's a tough one for some people, isn't it?
Right, it is. And so let me just remind you again that the end game is for doctors to talk about you. So, doctors gossip kind of like teenage girls. So you want your name passed around so other doctors find you the same way I found my biller. Okay, but how do you get your first couple of clients? Well, that's where the book comes in. Doctors' time is very precious. They don't know whom they can trust. And the rate at which your practice grows really is the rate at which you build trust. I think the best way to build trust is to deliver value. And so if you sent a doctor a copy of the book, just think about how this positions you very differently than somebody else. So these tools that you will get as a licensee make your question a lot easier. So I thank you for posing it.
Yeah, and Rachel, if you ask your ABS rep, the person who sent you the email to this webinar, ask them for the agenda, the training agenda. We have 10 modules now that people go through one-on-one with an instructor over a go-to meeting like this. Nobody on there but you and the instructor, or you and a partner or spouse, of course. And you can ask all the questions you want, but you'll see if you talk to those people carefully that we have about a dozen different ways that we can teach you how to get in front of the doctor. This book is one of the tools that we provide, but we just don't have time on this webinar to cover everything. If we did, we'd be going through all of the different services that you can offer to the doctor that we've come up with over the years to get you in the door. That's what we call these. In fact, Rachel, these are door openers. The doctor may not be ready to talk to you about their billing, but maybe they have a problem right now with, dealing with the government, being overcoding maybe some of their stuff or undercoding. And so they need help with that. We've got solutions for all those problems. Ask more about those and you'll see. Okay, let's see. Here's another one, Pamela. Oh, Pamela's just saying thanks for the answers. Okay, so Dr. Vicki, I thought I would just take just a second here. We've got just a couple of minutes and let you just kind of give any advice that you want to the folks, and then I'm going to answer any other questions that come in and kind of tell people how they can get involved in our business.
All right, well, as somebody who is a strong advocate for doctors, I am here to help doctors thrive. And I just want to thank you for exploring this opportunity, because for many doctors, this is the missing piece. Like, if they can only get their billing under control, their lives can transform. So I just want to thank you for taking time to explore this area. And just know that if you decide to become an ABS licensee, I will be here to support your success. And there's not a whole lot of organizations that can say, hey, we've got a doctor who's going to help you, but here you will.
Yes, and you've been a wonderful help to many, many of our licensees over the past few years, Dr. Vicki. So thank you for taking the time to share your insights on this topic with the people here today. I hope we can do another one of these sometime soon.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.